Pompeii is frozen in time. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, it buried the bustling Roman city under layers of volcanic ash and pumice, preserving everything in a catastrophic snapshot. For centuries, the ruins have provided an incredible window into Roman life. But it's the victims themselves, the people caught in their final moments, that tell the most haunting stories. And modern technology is revealing that almost everything we thought we knew about how they died, and even who they were, was wrong. Using advanced CT scanning techniques, researchers have been looking beneath the famous plaster casts of Pompeii's victims with unprecedented detail. What they're finding is rewriting the narrative of one of history's most infamous disasters. The pregnant woman who wasn't pregnant. The family that wasn't a family. Evidence that the eruption happened months later than we thought. And proof that the disaster killed far more indiscriminately than anyone realized. Let me walk you through what these scans revealed, because the story of Pompeii's last day is more complex and more tragic than the romanticized version we've been telling for over a century. When archaeologists first began excavating Pompeii in the 18th century, they discovered something remarkable. The solidified volcanic ash had formed molds around the bodies of victims. As the organic material decomposed over the centuries, hollow cavities were left behind, perfectly preserving the final postures and even the clothing of those who perished. In 1863, Italian archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli pioneered a technique that would transform our understanding of the disaster. He realized that by pouring liquid plaster into these cavities, he could create exact replicas of the victims in their final moments. Without this method, the fragile spaces left by decomposed bodies would eventually collapse and be lost forever. The results were stunning. Instead of just finding skeletal remains, archaeologists now had the actual forms of people who had lived and died in Pompeii. The plaster casts revealed incredible detail of their last moments. Some huddled together for comfort. Others were caught mid-stride, trying to flee. Still others lay prone, having succumbed to toxic fumes or collapsing structures. Over the decades, around 100 victims have been captured in plaster, including pet dogs and other animals. The full scale of the disaster was much greater, though. Somewhere between 10,000 and 25,000 residents of Pompeii and nearby Herculaneum are estimated to have been killed. But the plaster technique had one major limitation. The casts weren't transparent. The actual skeletal remains inside remained completely hidden from view. For over 150 years, we could see the outside of these victims, but had no idea what the bones within might reveal. That changed with a major project undertaken to restore and scan 86 of these plaster casts using computerized tomography, the same CT technology used in hospitals. CT scanners use X-rays to take multiple cross-sectional images of an object, then process those slices to construct detailed 3D models. For archaeologists, this meant they could finally look through the plaster without disturbing or damaging the contents within. The results have been genuinely astonishing. One of the most surprising discoveries concerned dental health. The scans revealed well-preserved teeth in many victims with very few cavities or signs of decay. This tells us something important about the Roman diet. It was generally low in processed sugars, a major culprit in modern dental problems, and high in fiber, fruits, and vegetables. Pompeians ate grains, olive oil, fish, and some meat, relatively healthy by ancient standards. However, the scans also showed significant wear on the teeth, likely from impurities in their food. Small particles of grit and stone from traditional grain mills ended up in their bread, slowly grinding down tooth enamel over years of eating. Another discovery completely overturned a long-held belief. A cast discovered in the Forum in 1963 had been known for decades as the pregnant woman, due to the noticeable protrusion of the abdomen. The CT scan revealed that the individual was likely not pregnant at all and may not even have been a woman. Researchers explained there had been a tendency to interpret any rounded belly as a sign of pregnancy, leading to inaccurate and romanticized interpretations of the victims. The scans allowed for incredibly detailed examinations of individual victims. One example is a cast of a small boy estimated to be around 4 years old. He was found lying near an adult male and female, presumed to be his parents, alongside an even younger infant who appeared to be asleep on the mother's lap. The plaster cast showed the outline of the boy's clothing. The CT scans revealed his skeleton beneath and captured fine details of his facial expression through high-resolution 3D reconstructions. The scans also provided new evidence about how people actually died, beyond the established knowledge of suffocation from ash and gas and thermal shock from pyroclastic flows. The scans revealed that many victims suffered severe cranial trauma, significant head injuries from collapsing buildings. As heavy volcanic material accumulated on roofs and the ground shook from tremors accompanying the eruption, structures weakened and gave way, crushing those sheltering inside. Perhaps most significantly, the scans challenged long-held assumptions about who exactly perished in Pompeii. For years, a common belief persisted that those trapped by Vesuvius were predominantly the most vulnerable: the elderly, the infirm, women, and children. People thought the young and healthy had managed to escape, leaving behind those least capable of swift flight. But the comprehensive skeletal data emerging from these scans paints a far more indiscriminate picture. The victims represent a cross-section of the entire community, what researchers called a random sampling of normality. Young, old, healthy, sick, men, women, children. The catastrophe struck so suddenly and overwhelmingly that it caught people from all walks of life. It didn't discriminate based on age or physical ability. This is comparable to other instantaneous disasters that often show the same pattern. Intriguing evidence also emerged regarding the eruption's timing. The traditionally accepted date is August 24th, 79 AD, based on one version of Pliny the Younger's eyewitness letter. However, other evidence had led some researchers to propose a later date, perhaps in October or November. Archaeological finds included autumnal fruits like pomegranates and braziers suggesting cold weather, both inconsistent with late August in southern Italy. The CT project added another piece of evidence to this debate. The examination of one cast clearly showed the impression of thickly woven heavy fabric. Such dense clothing seems far more suited to the crisp air of autumn in Campania than the heat of late August. This lends scientific weight to the theory that Vesuvius erupted later in the year than the traditional date suggests. Other scans yielded equally fascinating details. The skeleton of one adult male victim was clearly visualized, showing his spine, ribs, and pelvis intact within the cast. In some cases, researchers used advanced imaging techniques with specific contrast settings to differentiate structures, or even attempt to reconstruct soft tissues digitally. Scans of skulls were processed to mimic the appearance of muscles and skin, bringing ancient faces closer to life. While plaster casting remains the most common preservation method, researchers have experimented with alternatives. In 1984, one skeleton was cast in resin, capturing even finer details like individual hairs and fabric textures. However, resin is expensive and difficult to work with, making plaster the preferred choice for most. Applications. The CT scanning project has opened new doors for non-invasive research. By creating digital models, scientists can study the remains indefinitely without risking damage to the fragile originals. The scans allow for virtual autopsies, revealing injuries and diseases that would otherwise go completely unnoticed. Details about diet, health, trauma, age at death, all preserved in bone and now accessible without ever touching the physical remains. What makes this project so significant is that it's forcing us to reconsider almost everything about Pompeii's final day. The victims weren't who we thought they were. They didn't die the way we assumed. The disaster may not even have happened when we believed it did. Every scan reveals new details that complicate the simple narrative we've been telling. As technology advances, we'll continue learning more. Perhaps one day, facial reconstructions will allow us to look into the eyes of these ancient Romans, bridging the 2,000-year gap between their world and ours. For now, the CT scans remind us that even in death, even frozen in volcanic ash for 2 millennia, these people still have stories to tell. We just needed the right tools to hear them. If you want more videos about how modern technology is revealing hidden secrets from the ancient world, subscribe. Because every time scientists apply new techniques to old discoveries, we find out that history was messier, more human, and more surprising than we ever imagined.